Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sue Fasciani. I'm marketing manager with Tiger Home and Building Inspections. Thank you so much for joining us today for preparing a house for sale, less stress, faster sale. I'm here with Joe DeLaurentis. He is principal owner of Tiger Group, also a licensed home inspector for 26 years. Joe holds supervisory pest control license for wood destroying insects. He also is a member of the Society of Home Inspectors and has a background in specialty in new construction and remodeling, extensive knowledge, and really does enjoy new construction. And on top of all that, Joe manages and trains our staff of 22 inspectors. A little bit about Tiger before we move on is that we are a family-owned company. Also on the meeting today is Kara Golden. She is Joe's sister, and we'll be handling the questions today. So we're going to ask that you put your questions in the chat, and then at the breaks, Kara will go ahead and read those out for Joe to answer. So like I mentioned, we're a family-owned business since 1992. We do perform commercial assessments and residential inspections throughout the state of Connecticut, also bordering towns in New York and Mass, Rhode Island. And we do stay open 7 days a week. You guys are out there working 7 days a week. We're out there 7 days a week for you. All of our home inspectors do have the wood destroying insect license, so we're able to include that for free with our residential inspections. And we have a staff, an environmental staff. They are all certified to do water quality draws for that testing, and also they are nationally certified for radon in air, and they're out there setting up those electronic monitors, which I'm sure many of you have seen them. We have a mold division, so we can do mold assessments and testing. And also, a lot of our 22 inspectors hold specialties such as 203K. We have a commercial division. Many of them are very good with antique homes and equestrian properties. So anytime you have a question about any of those, types of properties, feel free to reach out to myself or Kara, and we'd be happy to guide you in the right direction. Talk about our raffle. We're doing a raffle today. We're doing two. Please follow us on Instagram. If you already follow us, then if you can go ahead and make a nice comment about today's seminar, you can see it's right there on your screen, but we can put that in the chat for you. Maybe Kara, you can put our Instagram site. Sure. Yep. Okay. And then also we're going to be doing a raffle at the end for just for in your attendance today. So that will be the Chipotle raffle.
Great. Thank you, Sue. Just a quick word on Instagram and Facebook type communications, other than our normal announcements and informational type pieces. When we have last minute cancellations or openings in the office, that's an avenue that Kara uses to make quick announcements. For instance, yesterday, Fairfield County opening came up. So with today's, market, things are happening rapidly. That's a place to keep an eye out and get notices for when we may have openings and you're in a bind. Just a quick touch on COVID procedures. Things have changed dramatically since Connecticut changed its mask regulations for what we're all seeing in the field as realtors and inspectors. However, let's keep in mind that the Connecticut Realtor Association has not changed their statements. They're still suggesting that we reduce the number of people in the property. Their protocols still suggest only the inspector, the principal buyers, and their agents. Also requiring masks to be worn and when we're in the properties. Now, I'll be honest with you, I'm not seeing that on a daily basis. I'm seeing more of a discussion, making sure that the sellers are comfortable with the people in their home wearing masks or not, and or our clients and the realtors involved. But we have not seen a change come down from CTR yet. We continue to watch their website, as well as their text alert is fantastic. So something to keep an eye on there. We continue to have all the PPP needed. We wear shoe covers anyway, just so we're not tracking in people's homes. masks on most of the properties as needed. And we're open to the needs of the sellers. The whole idea of this, when we got back to CTR to ask, how come we're not making a change when the state did, is to keep sellers comfortable. We want them to allow showings, open houses, inspections, and people in the house, of course, so we don't restrict any more of the inventory than we already have. So importance of home maintenance. I think you all see this in the variation of properties, but in our inspection reports, over 50% of the findings are related to deferred maintenance. Most of these things are easily fixable by a homeowner with some skills or a handyman. I could cite right offhand a few examples. Cleaning gutters is a nuisance for all of us that own homes, but that can quickly turn into water getting in to the basement through that little hairline crack that has never leaked until we get some inundating rainstorm. Things like that. Many others may just be questions for the seller. So things come up, historical questions on maybe some evidence of infestations or underground oil tanks or service records and things. So a poorly maintained home obviously makes a buyer, in some cases, feel disenchanted or overwhelmed. This presentation used to be almost 100% geared towards our seller's preparation inspection. We're still going to touch on that, but we also added in how homeowners can work with you to prepare their home, some tips on things that we're finding and reactions that we see from our buyer clients when things that they expect us to bring up do come up. So I see now in the market that people are rushing. They know there's an immediacy to seeing a house quickly, to making a decision and potentially getting into a multiple offer situation. And they arrive at the home inspection and we give them our standard speech, introduction, as well as here's how our inspection procedure goes. And do you have any specific questions or concerns? And the most common answer I've seen is, I only spent about 10 minutes here. My wife hasn't even seen the house. So let's get inside. We want to just go see it. The point being that when they start running up against little things, they may feel a little bit disenchanted with the decisions that they made. Running through shortly the agenda here, some common inspection issues and potentially some of those fixes, how to avoid some of the surprises that can delay closings or impact the sale. And then, as I mentioned, the benefits of having the home inspected prior to the listing. How does this fit in our current market with things being so busy? One's first reaction may be, well, what's the purpose of that? I'm going to have 5 people bidding on my house. Well, we'll see some examples of how it can be beneficial when we have a multi-offer situation. We've assembled a top 12. We ran past 10 in doing this common inspection issues. Some of you are going to, shrug your shoulders and say, yeah, I hear these things every day. Well, that's the point of the discussion. Getting a jump on these and having your sellers address them before they become a question or a discussion is beneficial. I'll say it once and probably again. The easiest thing for me as an inspector to use as a positive is when there's a binder or a folder or a display of service records and updates to the home on that kitchen counter. It's an easy way for me to represent, look at this homeowner. They're a responsible homeowner. They're prepared for marketing their home. Let's run through quickly the dates of all these updates that they made. And people really start to feel, confidence in the purchase decision they made. So some simple things. Service records, it's one of the most common things that comes up every day for us. Outdated heating, cooling, potentially a gas or oil-fired water heater service record, well treatment equipment, service records on this kind of stuff. We all live very busy lives and it's easy to just let this stuff go, but the time to get back to checking on those dates is in preparation for sale. I mentioned a gutter example for you, moisture damage outside on trim. That could be as simple as something that's just starting to get a little soft, or it could be rotted wood. Foundation and floor cracks. we can take a look at those. Most houses are going to have some form of either hairline crack in the floor or foundation, potentially something a little bit more concerning that related to settlement. But having these addressed ahead of time is very important. Some people get a little freaked out about it. Some of them may be aware from the media of northeastern parts of Connecticut that have foundation issues. So now any foundation issue raises a question, even if they're 2 hours away from the crumbling foundation area of the state. And also, I'll say addressing these before you get someone in who's going to suggest an injection seal on an 8-foot wall, a typical settlement crack that can cost a lot of money compared to potentially, a homeowner or handyman handling it with some qualified materials. Infestations, or maybe not even active infestations, things as simple as birds, bats, mice, I find are in almost every home. Not everybody wants to admit it. Some people are super freaked out by it. So if you've had an exterminator before, check those service records, maybe make it current, and acknowledge any history of insect treatment. Water and moisture concerns in basements, always important on people's minds. And then, of course, advertising any radon issues maybe or tests you've had in the past. Garage door operation seems like a simple one. We run those doors up and down every day. Maybe they're a little clinky and not working well, but when you get a service contractor in there, it may turn into recommendations for more. So having them potentially serviced, or even a homeowner doing a simple lubrication to those is helpful. Crawl spaces, just had a crawl space instance this week. Arrived at the property, seller was backing out of the driveway. I said, "Do you need anything?" I said, "No, as long as, all the mechanicals, plumbing things are all up and running. Are there any difficult to get to attic or underfloor crawl spaces?" And then all of a sudden the light bulb went off. "Oh yeah, there's a crawl space under half of the house, but there's nothing in there. Why do you need to get in there?" Well, of course, no one had been in there for many years. A lot of loose hanging insulation, fairly significant mouse infestation and moisture problems. So have your sellers take a look into crawl space. Make sure it's accessible, number one. Make sure someone takes a peek in there to see if there's work to be done. Again, having that insulation put back up, or maybe getting an exterminator hired and having an active contract to show a buyer would prevent them from having to get their own people in, or the wondering of how significant it may or may not be. Windows, fog panes, light bulbs, these are all easy things, but we have some clients, when we say simply, "Well, there's a light that's not working," it's most likely the bulb. That's where you start, and then you move on to fixtures and switches. They want to know. So have your sellers simply run through the house and change any light bulbs that aren't working. And then driveways, walkways, and such, any sort of cracking, simple things, that's all presentation. And I'm sure many of you speak towards painting the front door or the approach to the house with those things. So we ran through this stuff in those examples. I talked about creating that sales binder. Things that can go in there, manuals are helpful, service contracts, histories of updates and repairs. As I said, the homeowners that list out for all of you the years that they did, the pool patio, the fence in the backyard, the front walkway, super helpful for people to see that stuff and get excited about what they're buying. Maybe a homeowner knows there's a pending project. They know that their roof has less than 5 years useful life, but it's not leaking. There's no need to change it. That's an opportunity for them to go out and get quotes. And we'll touch some more on this as we talk about our case examples. Environmental tests. It was for years the adage that, yeah, I'll do a seller's preparation inspection or I'll do some proactive chores to get the house ready, but I'm not going to test my water. I'm not going to test my radon. That adage is changing a little with this competitive offers and such on properties, because maybe it's best to put everything out on the table and say, look, we've already tested this stuff. Now we want your highest and best as everyone's putting in these competitive offers. Things that may require a contractor to do in preparation. I mentioned servicing those mechanical systems, repairing moisture damage trim outside. Maybe the foundation and floor crack is more significant than a homeowner could handle. Extermination, again, a good idea to have a contractor, some such in place. Just seller starting it and then saying, yes, we've addressed the situation and you can take over the contract is enough to build confidence in many people. Testing for radon air could be done by the homeowner. Our devices, electronic devices, are a little more thorough with the data that they give, and having a third party do it can be beneficial. Looking into this seller's preparation inspection, after we spoke about some of the things that your sellers can do, one of the things that helps is we work in conjunction with you and your seller. You may give them a lot of this advice, and maybe it falls short of them taking action. When it comes out in an inspection report, those that are interested will have an action list, as it may be, to go through and figure out, what do I want to fix? What do I want to get some quotes for? What do I have answers for with historical type items and things? So we've found our most successful clients with this service are either long-term occupants, choose a number, 12 years, 15 years plus. They've been in the house a long time. We all walk past things in our home that we know need to be addressed. I can think of a few doors that have delaminated, maybe a railing on an outdoor deck staircase or something that needs some repair. You just kind of look at it and go, I'll take care of that this weekend, and then years go by. Estate sales, the seller's prep works very well for. The family knows very little about the property. They'd like to get an idea of its condition in order to get ready to sell it. Sometimes some parties in that estate family don't acknowledge the condition and others do. So it helps to kind of have everything put on paper and shared amongst the family members. Some sellers haven't sold a house or bought a house in a long time. They may remember a home inspection as its early years, 30, 35 years ago, when it was a builder who came, walked through and wrote some notes down on a piece of paper for you. So they don't understand the extent of what the buyers expect in today's markets. Interestingly enough, we see a lot of circumstances where the sellers on rehabbed or flip properties could really benefit from having an inspection. And the reason I say this is many of the buyer clients come into these transactions thinking that the house is pretty much brand new, that everything's been addressed. And we find that the bathrooms and kitchens and the interior remodeling has been done really, really well. However, things like attic areas, utility spaces, maybe there's a furnace in place that's really only 10 years old, but they never changed the filters, they never cleaned the ductwork. And all of a sudden there's a bunch of surprises for a buyer that had the impression they were coming into a brand new house, as it may be. So that creates a checklist for that contractor who's flipping the property, and they can run through and clean things up before you create any dismay amongst the buyers. And then lastly, in our current market, sellers in a strong market can benefit, as well as an informed buyer. The more information that's on the table allows you and your sellers to look at these multi-offer situations. Okay, we got 4 or 5 offers. Here's how they differ. You have all your contingencies to look at, of course. But if those buyers are aware of the conditions, i.e. they've seen a home inspection report that was done by the seller, there's less chance for any snags to come up, and maybe the sellers have selected what they thought was the best bidder, and something goes sideways with conditions, and all of a sudden, where are those other 4 bidders when we're 5 or 6 days away from that agreement? So just some ideas. In today's market, we have limited days the houses are on the market. That creates challenges. We have reduced contingencies coming in, right? People are writing no home inspection. I don't know why, of course. Dollar values, only negotiating potential negotiations for over X number of dollars, and little to no negotiations, which makes sense because there's multiple offers. All this has created, as you all know, a stressful environment. You're out there running around with your clients to see properties quickly, figure out if you like it enough to get an offer, how high do we offer, and all these things. I'm not trying to speak towards knowing everything about your role, but I know from many of the realtors that I know that it's very active and very stressful. So if you had a seller's inspection done, you'd be able to further present the property and market it per se beyond what people can see of the pictures in a showing. Sellers have an opportunity to select the best offer, resulting in a smoother transaction. And we've seen occurrences, and I fear for what may continue with buyers' satisfaction. Are people going to have some buyer's remorse when they get into some of these properties if they didn't have an inspection contingency, if they didn't know all of the information coming in? That's not to say that they could have negotiated or not, but maybe they just wanted the information to know what they were buying. I had a recent experience with some of this, not quite buyer's remorse, but a little bit of wishing that they had more information. I had a client that purchased with no home inspection contingency, and they were smart enough afterwards, because they were seasoned purchasers. Executives have been, shuffled around the country over the years. They've bought and sold, over 10 properties. And their comment was, we really just wanted you to come in right before we moved in and get a baseline on what do we need to take care of the house. We found some indications of an underground storage tank, prior use of, and raised the question of, okay, now where do we go to get information on this? Is it on record at the town? Did the sellers maybe have some record of it? There was some termite damage that was well repaired on the structural side of things. There was evidence of prior treatment. However, they don't have any records for it. So future resale now, they don't have any information on that to provide to other parties. Active mouse infestation, not a big deal, but there was some evidence of extermination, both professional but unlabeled bait boxes. And again, no ability to find out when was that extermination done. Was there a contract? Who is the company? And lastly, fireplace flue crack. They were a bit dismayed about this, as the one of the parties of the couple was really interested in using fireplaces. So that's one condition that they would have liked to have known more about. They have a gas log option. They're still going to have a sweep come look at it to see what needs to be done. But this is just an example of some things that they would have liked to have taken action on, and maybe a seller's preparation inspection would have provided this information, and they still could have gone in with no inspection contingency. As another case study example, to continue on how a contract may go with or without a seller's preparation inspection, we created the Not Handy family. They're migrating from the city, as depending on where y'all are from in Connecticut, we see a fair amount of around the whole state. First-time home buyers, young professionals, never owned a power tool, and not interested in doing any work on their homes. They're purchasing a property here with a seller's preparation inspection that's completed prior to listing. So I'm getting cued here to ask you all if there's questions. Do you have any care?
I'm sorry, I do, and I apologize.
My watch is vibrating, my phone's text. What's up?
I thought it was a good spot before we move forward. There were a few questions referenced in the last section. So the first one is, what about roof replacement? I think referring to maybe our top 12 issues or concerns we often see.
Roof replacement, I mean, I wouldn't say it comes up all the time. Roofing and heating systems are clearly, when you ask a client upon arrival, do you have any particular concerns? They will say, roof as a concern, but on a daily basis as something that should have been, corrected by a seller prior to transaction. I wouldn't say it fits in that top number of them. I will say that there are many roofs that, as a result of inspection, just need some small repairs. Maybe that's just a cleaning and treatment of heavy growth on the shaded side. That looks really scary to an uneducated buyer. We spend a lot of time telling people that, oh, look, the roof's only 10, 12 years old, although there's a bunch of moss and lichen and algae staining, it can be cleaned and still have good useful life left. The other one is the roof that's nearing the end of its useful life. If a seller had some small repairs done and got a receipt from a roofer to say, repairs done to continue with useful life, expected useful life is up to 5 years, then you would remove that from the conversation, maybe even an estimate included with that to say when a roof needs to be replaced, it may cost between, X and Y. And in my opinion, that prevents the buyer client from just all of a sudden jumping on the phone and getting a roofer out and getting what normally is a much higher estimate, right, to negotiate with.
Thanks, Joe. Also, do you check septic tanks, and can you check if there is an underground oil tank?
We do not do septic inspections. You should have a licensed septic company. They carry a different license than a home inspector. And I think most of you are aware, most of that is done accompanied with pumping. And in today's world, potentially a camera for pipeline inspection as well. So septic is beyond the scope of a home inspection. Oil tanks, we do not do a search for. If during our home inspection, we see an indication of a prior tank, like the fuel lines I mentioned in my example, then we would suggest first starting with paper trail. Was there a tank here that was removed, or is there documentation? If the owners don't have it, the local fire marshal may, depending on when it was pulled. And then lastly, a tank search can be done to clear the property of any buried tanks.
Thanks. And David's asking if there's a price difference between a seller preparation inspection and a regular inspection. And David, I'm going to tell you, no, there's not. And Joe is going to explain why and the difference in the services in the next.
I thought you were going to answer the whole question for me.
No.
Long ago, we had a modified seller's inspection that didn't include, living spaces per se, because we figured the occupants would know things about the interior rooms, the bathrooms, the kitchen. We found that without including all those things, there were missing pieces of the inspection. So yes, it's the same process and the same fee. The additional part of it is it's a different consultation. We use a different voice with our clients on site and also in reporting. To give them direction on preparing the house for sale versus a buyer with the conditions. So a little different consultation type mentality.
Great, thanks, Joe. You can talk about the not handies.
Moving
now.
on. Thanks for the signal. So back to the not handies. The sellers for their purchase did conduct a roof. This is right in line with our attendees' question. Newer roof, right? I can see from here. However, notice the side porch roof, which I'll speak towards. Nice home for this young couple here. At the seller's inspection, we noticed some trim damage and active carpenter ant infestation. We recommended treatment by an exterminator, also suggesting a contractor repair some of the trim. And in doing so, said contractor found out there was some ant damage behind. So they ended up removing some of the trim in order to address that repair there, as you can see in the wall. This is that side roof. So we had that nice roof on the main house that was replaced within the last 5 years or so. However, because the side roof wasn't as old, they had some heavy growth on it. Wasn't as old when they made their replacement, but is an older roof. They had some issues with that. There was a recommendation for a roofer to do just what I cited earlier, come out and look at it. Can it be cleaned and made functional? And also what's the price in the future, if that's the case, for replacement on that roof section. Historically, they added a bathroom to a little addition porch section. In doing so, they needed to get proper pitch for the plumbing and decided to drill through a lot of the new framing. So we had some structural issues there. There was no sag in the floor or real risks. However, not done properly, you can't drill through an engineered framing member, as you can see in the image. Again, having the ability to get a contractor out, or maybe the one back that did the work to fix this, versus waiting for a buyer who might see this as a significant concern, or their uncle who's a remodeler tells them that, you know, this is a big issue or some such. Additional maintenance type items were reported: cleaning gutters and extending downspouts for good practice, repairing paint and rot on a front door, a garage door opener that had a safety operation issue, with recommendation for a service contractor to come check it. There's also an active leak under a bathroom sink, probably one of those, I'll fix it this weekend kind of things. And that did cause some moisture damage to the sink cabinet and some apparent visible mold there. Recommendation to repair the leak and the cabinet and address the potential mold concerns, which of course, as you know, in today's market, although it's an isolated cabinet area, as soon as you start talking about mold potentials, some people can get excited about that. Additionally, a couple miswired outlets throughout the house, which on the scope of things, as we're checking outlets throughout a property, the individual outlet or switch to fix is more of a maintenance type item. What we're really looking for is a bigger representative concern. You know, are 50% of the outlets miswired? Okay, what went on here? Did someone come through and try to replace the plugs that didn't know what they were doing? Or is there a wiring issue, in that circuit per se or something? So there's a couple of small outlets to repair. So when you total this up from the seller side, they managed this transaction in their own fashion. They went out and tackled some of these things. They were able to control prices by having time to figure out options to handle this. Carpenter damage was repaired by their handyman. That trim work we saw, $300. Treatment for $300, and then the trim repairs, $1,000. The roof turned out to be a repair and cleaning situation at $500, and they also got a quote for that small roof section to provide to the sellers at $2,500. Garage door was a servicing at $225. Their choice to address that vanity was to purchase a new vanity. Their son came over, put the vanity in. They were out at $250. In that same instance, by removing the existing water damage vanity, they removed the whole mold conversation. Electrician, $300 for some repairs there, and then some other maintenance items. So yeah, they put forth some money. Not everybody has the opportunity to spend $2,000 to $3,000 on things. Maybe you pick and choose, maybe you get estimates on them, or maybe you just simply acknowledge them so that buyers are aware of something they may need to address. For our instances here, we'll compare this price with what may have occurred if a buyer came in without a seller's inspection. Any questions at this point on the chat?
Sorry, no additional questions at this time.
So in comparison, we have a property without seller's preparation inspection to inform the buyers of those conditions. This causes some renegotiations and added stress. You have buyers, as I mentioned, that may scramble to get quotes. Either they know someone in the business, sometimes in another state, or they jump on, you know, the internet and try to find someone quickly to give them a quote. It's not a knock on service providers, but some of them give inflated quotes when they find out it's just for a buyer for a real estate transaction. Maybe it's because they didn't see the property. I saw a chimney estimate within the last month, difference between two service providers of a couple $1,000s. One of them went off of pictures that were sent by the client to them to give, you know, a repair price, and it was nearly triple what the guy who went out there to look at it was. So you see some oddities. You may see inflated quotes. Appraisals may come back with some instances. I end up writing a lot of letters to re-explain things that we've already put in our inspection report as maybe just a maintenance suggestion, but appraisers are coming back with wanting the underwriters wanting letters to explain a foundation crack, again because of it's a Connecticut property, moisture damage on things, a letter to explain a retaining wall settlement. So maybe a seller addressing some of these things would prevent appraisal issues as well. And then of course there's the potential that a buyer just gets overwhelmed with all of the conditions. So when they came back to try to renegotiate this, again, I do acknowledge that in present market, there's less and less of this going on. However, for the state of the example here, they got a carpentry treatment and repair quote that was almost double the other at $2,200. The roofer that they came out erred towards replacement rather than fixing it and cleaning it. And they came back with also a conversation that there may be some plywood issues underneath. And if there are, we'll include some monies for that. So their price was $4,000. Garage was the same service price. They came to look at the vanity. There was conversation about mold and cleaning, and they chose a more expensive vanity replacement, obviously. So there's an $800 quote there. Their electrician was a little higher, and as was a guess on some of the maintenance items. So their guesstimates quickly jumped up to $8,000. So, you know, again, representative examples, but you can see how controlling some of these things and addressing them ahead of time would have prevented all the unnecessary stress of it, as well as made for a more informed transaction and smoother transaction. So we'll talk a little bit about the benefits of the seller preparation, some of the objections that come up if you as realtors suggest this. We have some realtors in Connecticut who do this consistently on almost all of their listings. In other parts of the country, you know, national seminars that I go to and such, it's fairly commonplace. And then we can also talk about Tiger's seller preparation inspection. So we talked about some of these benefits. Well-maintained home will stand out and give the buyer more confidence. Disclosing some of these deficiencies can remove them from the negotiating table. You may have fewer post-inspection negotiations from a buyer. With our services, we do offer that 3-ring binder with all the tabs set up. So it's an easy in for you to suggest them actually taking action and putting all the information in there. Most importantly, avoid surprises. So even in this competitive bid market, multiple offer situations, you can keep the surprises out of it. So, you know, the worst case scenario is to get a nice high, choose that nice high bid and have the property be, you know, off market for 5 or 6 days, and then a surprise occurs. So what are some of the seller objections we've seen historically? I don't want to spend any money that I can't recover. You know, many of the instances and clients that we've worked with time and time again prove that to be wrong. Consider an investment in the home. As you sell anything, right? The simplest example I give to people is if I was to go put my car at the end of my driveway for sale or take it into a dealership to trade it in, I'd spend a little time cleaning it up, right? Clean the interior, wash the outside, make it look a little bit better for sale. No different than what you could do with the property. Delays in properties can cost money pretty quickly. You may have mortgages, taxes, utility bills, things like that, that can total a fair amount of money for people to carry a property as it may. Common question is, what if a buyer's inspector finds something different? We're all working under the same licensing and standards. The issues that are brought up, if there are any, ought to be about the same. However, I have seen that opinions can differ. We had an instance years ago with this service where a buyer came back with identification of mold in an attic. Turns out what they called mold was never tested, never identified properly. And we went back to revisit it, did a free test just to prove what was going on. And it turned out not to be mold. So yes, there could be opinions that are different, but in general, it ought to be similar information that's provided to I may have to disclose information. 9 times out of 10, it's all going to come out in the wash anyway. You really would rather have a buyer be able to make an informed decision. The disclosure documents, that's a discussion with clients and their attorneys about filling those out. But, a good idea to have the information. And I mentioned earlier, not everybody has the money to fix all these things, but just having the knowledge, maybe you simply use that report as a marketing tool for awareness for the clients. Maybe you get estimates on some of the bigger items to let people know, here's what it's going to cost you to replace the roof or fix the chimney. I don't have the time or money to handle that. Having this information puts you in control. We always talk about driving the bus in these transactions. You know what to expect. You don't have to be completely nervous if the buyers do have an inspection on inspection day. Getting the multiple quotes is one of the key takeaways. When the seller can do that instead of buyer doing it, you may get a more reasonable price. You have the ability to wait and sift through who gives you the best pricing on that service, and then making the decisions on what actions to take and preparing all that historical information. You all know it's a bit of a nuisance from us inspectors when we say, yeah, there's evidence of insect treatment, get the paperwork. There's evidence of an oil tank, get the paperwork. But having that historical information on the forefront for people will prevent a lot of those crunch time questions that need to be answered. So our seller's preparation inspection service, to answer again that question earlier, is a full home inspection. It does include the wood destroying insect inspection. As Sue mentioned, all of our inspectors have a license to conduct the wood destroying insect inspection, so it's included free with both the seller's and the buyer's inspection. There's the binder example in the left image, a way to organize things that will present the property to buyers. And we also offer yard signs. We see some of our clients who want to advertise the proactive stance that they've taken to prepare the property for sale. Another stop for questions. Anybody have anything?
I do have a couple. The first question is, what is your wait time for an inspection? This says specifically in Fairfield, but maybe you can speak to the different areas of the state.
I would say currently, as of today, we're probably 3 days out, 2-3 days. That changes on a daily basis, depending on time of week. When we run into the busy bookings of Monday, Tuesday, that may make Tuesday, Wednesday a little more full, but generally within a week, within a couple of days.
Great, thanks, Joe. And I think you just answered this one, but are sellers' inspections less expensive than the buyer's inspection? So
no, same price. If anything, we have more time put into the service again, as far as that consultation.
And then I had one last question about the slides here. This program and the video will be made available to you all. We don't typically send the slide presentation, but the video will be posted on YouTube, and we'll send you the link for that. And that's it.
Great, thank you. Appreciate all of your input. So we do have a couple things that we will send out to you in a follow-up email. One of them is a seller's preparation flyer. This is a great tool if you're discussing with sellers. Remember all those types that we mentioned that really work well with this service, but it lists a few of the things, reasons why it's a great service to take advantage of for a seller preparing. And the second document we'll send along to you is awesome for daily use, whether you're on the listing side or the buyer side, but preparing for inspection day. We have found that the more communication you all have with your clients about what's going to occur is very helpful. Again, if they've been in the market and done this in the last few years, they probably remember, but more and more sellers are working from home. And it's nice to let them know, if they're not aware of a home inspection, how long we might be there. Could be 2.5, 3 hours in the property. In our company, you may have another individual coming along, a certified radon professional, to set the radon and draw the water. So there's more people coming to their home. And yeah, it's an invasive process. We're going to be going through and running all the fixtures in their house. If they're sitting in their office working from home and hearing all this activity, it can get a little frustrating. So letting the sellers know, helping with getting pets either out of the way or out of the house to make things easier for buyers and such to come into the home. So a good working document for you to help for inspection day. And lastly, we'll close with some conversation about choosing a home inspector, advice for your clients, advice for you all as far as referrals go. Notice the word fully in front of the licensed and insured. In Connecticut, if you're not aware, we are required to be licensed as home inspectors. That also goes for New York and Massachusetts, but not Rhode Island. We say fully because there is an internship program. You have to do 100 inspections under a supervisor, as well as pass the National Home Inspection Exam to complete your full licensing. You are able and allowed to work as an intern. You're able to own your own business, and that can go on for years. I say this because in a market where competitive pricing can come around, some people gravitate towards maybe newer inspectors with lesser prices. Just be sure they're getting the proper service. It's better to have more value and good service than a little bit less on the price. And that also talks towards insurance. In Connecticut, you are not required to carry any insurance to be a home inspector, to own a home inspection business, or any of the above. Things to be aware of on the insurance front: errors and omissions is the most common occurrence. As a responsible business, we carry all of these insurance types. Liability insurance is important. What happens if the wind blows a ladder off the roof and it lands on the seller's car that's in the driveway? Is that inspector able to cover that? Is there insurance for it? And this goes for septic providers, a pool service company. Who's coming on your listing properties? How are you able to protect your sellers? And workers' compensation for any employees as well that are on these properties prevents any injuries from falling upon other parties. So something to think about when dealing with service providers. We've been in business for nearly 30 years now and always carried appropriate insurance so that we can cater to our clients as well as the real estate community and sellers that are involved in these transactions. Customer service is very important to us, on the forefront. When people first call us to schedule or ask questions, our office staff is available 8 to 8 all weekdays, 8 to 6 Saturdays, and 6 hours on Sundays now. To help with all of those things. Additionally, we have online scheduling available through our website, as we're all running many odd hours with all of this. So those email requests are answered first thing in the morning for scheduling. We offer all those environmental tests as well that go along with home inspection. That covers mold assessments, radon testing, water testing. I mentioned many times our licensing to handle the wood destroying insect inspections. We do closely monitor the Connecticut standards of practice and continue to adhere to those, and in many cases go beyond the licensing standards provided to us by Connecticut. And it's ever important to maintain reputation, credentials, and experience. One of the values of a multi-inspector firm is that we always have other inspectors to discuss experiences with, raise questions with, in order to make sure that our services are accurate and complete. It's a huge benefit for me to be able to go out into offices and do presentations, or now virtually. We've learned a lot about your business on a daily basis, and that allows us to continue to develop ours to work with the real estate community as well as our clients.
Great, thanks, Joe. Just two quick questions, and then I'm going to announce our raffle winners. The
Sure.
first question, well, comment is, a couple of you have requested the presentation to use with listing clients, so I will actually also attach a PDF file as well as the link to the video. Secondly, if a seller makes repairs, does the problem go into the report?
So we would have to come back and review a property for that to occur. Many of our clients would use it as a working document or ink up the report as it may be. For instance, let's say in our example of today, they addressed the framing issue in that bathroom. I would simply ink over it, addressed by John, framing contractor, receipt attached. And I think that's a good way to handle it. If someone wanted us to come back through a property and re-edit a report, we've certainly done that before as well.
Thank you. And lastly, how do you handle it when sellers want to be at the inspection? I don't know why listing agents allow this to happen. And she goes on. So just talk about that.
Assuming you're referring to when a buyer has an inspection, not today's conversation of sellers. Yeah. So I agree with you. It makes things more difficult. Some people may actually be in earnest thinking I'll be here to answer questions for you. It makes things a little more difficult. So how do we handle it? We have a discussion with our clients and their representing realtors to say, what do you want to do today? Do you want me not to speak in front of the seller so that the information is all held confidential? We can inspect a section and then step outside, make sure we're out of earshot and that kind of thing. And it leaves it up to the client to make that decision. And, there's a rare occurrence over all the years that it becomes strained, as it may be, with a seller interjecting every time you make a comment. And the realization there is you just go about your job and then you summarize and review, go back and see things if you need to when you're outside the seller's presence. But best case is that they're not home. It must have been a few years ago, we were in an office and a manager gave her group of realtors great advice. She said, don't raise emotions of your seller. If you're sitting at the kitchen table and every time the inspector says something, you text that to the seller, you're naturally going to have that seller completely freaked out, wanting to come home, wanting to be involved, wanting to answer questions. So I think the best advice from that manager was let the inspection play out, see what the buyers have an interest in addressing or questions that may come up, and put them all into one list so that your seller is not, living on eggshells throughout the whole inspection day.
Super. And I have our raffle winners. So our attendance raffle winner is Caitlin Kavanaugh, and our Instagram winner is Cindy Karlowski. I hope I said that correctly.
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. You will receive the follow-up email from Sue, and here are our cell phone numbers and contact information. Please go to our website, and there's lots of great information for you as well as your clients. Reach out to us anytime if you have questions, and we look forward to working with you all in the near future.